Hi everyone, it's Gary Nicholson here for the Mountain Weather Information Service. This is your planning outlook video on Tuesday the 12th of February. It's a windy picture through the middle part of this week. South to southwesterlies that stay in charge as high pressure is positioned to the east of us. Occasional bits and pieces of rain just coming into most western mountains, but amounting to very little in total. And there's an ongoing thaw, with temperatures generally staying above freezing up to the higher tops, and not a great deal of snow left, I don't think, as we head on into next week. So for those with half-term interest going into next week, it looks a rather disappointing story for our ski centres. The easier temperatures then at 850 millibars, and that level is just a bit higher now than the highest tops in Scotland. It gives us a steer though, and it means that temperatures are above freezing all the way up to those highest tops. Some inversion conditions getting in locally, some very mild conditions in northern Scotland through these days ahead. Onwards into Friday, briefly as a cold front edges in from the west, we might just see a drop of freezing level to around 1,000 metres or so, perhaps temporarily lower in the northwest highlands, but as a front wriggles and waves around, that will get pushed away, so any cold air never really properly gets in. And as we head on into the weekend, it's that mild story with temperatures above freezing again to the highest tops. Early next week, there may just be a subtle drop of freezing level to put the freezing level onto the highest tops in Scotland. Again, 900, 1,000 metres is perhaps as low as you go, and we're not looking at temperatures anywhere near as cold as they have been in some recent weeks, but just a little bit cooler than what we're seeing in these next few days at least. Synoptic charts for the next few days, and for Wednesday, high pressure there is centred towards the Low Countries. That south by southwesterly is in charge. The fronts that are shown on this chart are very weak, nothing compared to the powerful systems that came through around last weekend. Nevertheless, there's some rain or drizzle across the Western Highlands, a few spits and spots elsewhere around Irish Sea coasts, with low cloud covering many of these hills. Best of the breaks towards the north and east of Scotland and onto the Pennines as well. Winds widely gale force with some powerful gusts through the cols and passes, and gusty in places to some lower slopes. And with inversion conditions setting up, those low-level gusts will continue into Thursday, and again some of the strongest winds, not necessarily the highest tops, through the passes will see some of the most powerful gusts. It's broadly dry for many, the low cloud tending to break a bit more readily through Thursday, but around the western coast of Scotland you might still hang on to banks of low-level cloud. Some of the higher tops poking out above that at times, a bit variable from place to place, more widely across England and Wales and maybe into the south of Scotland, with time that cloud sheet tending to break up more readily just as drier air gets in. Now, timing of a cold front edging in from the west on Friday is a little bit uncertain. It may make much slower progress than this, but the idea of something coming in to give some rain to the western side of Scotland, maybe eventually some spits and spots coming onto West Wales and Dumfries and Galloway, very little of that getting towards the eastern side of the Highlands. It may never get there all day, but just be aware of that front trying to make its way in. And ahead of that, again, some very strong and gusty winds up to severe gale force on some of the higher areas. By the time we get through into Saturday, what's left of similar waving fronts are still around, and a story of low cloud for many mountains, drizzly rain, maybe some persistent damp conditions in places without coming to a great deal in total. Again, it's more western regions around the Irish Sea and up the west coast of Scotland which sees the lowest cloud. Best of any breaks more towards the northern side of the Highlands, and again maybe towards the Pennines. The wind not looking quite as strong by this stage, it just depends exactly how close the low out towards the west gets through the weekend. Doesn't look as windy as midweek, but still rather blustery on some of the higher areas into Sunday. And again, a weak cold front producing some rain or drizzle in places and some low cloud. Best of conditions again the further east and northeast you go. As always, stay up to date with your latest local details every day on our website, the 3-day PDFs that go out every single day. Now onwards beyond the weekend, high pressure stays toward the east of us, low pressure is over the Atlantic to our northwest, and temporarily something a little bit cooler and showery just comes in off the North Atlantic early in the new week. Maybe just bits of snow and hail occasionally on the higher mountains, not accumulating a great deal, and on lower slopes still probably often of rain. Winds will vary a little bit from day to day, but generally as a southwesterly, even well on into next week. Now it seems as though high pressure wants to re-establish itself somewhere across Central Europe as we go through the week ahead. Low pressure stays well out to the west of us. The prevailing flow is then south to southwesterly, and maybe with time a bit more south to southeasterly, depending exactly where the high centres itself. So essentially a fairly dry story, barring just any weak fronts that might try and edge in from the Atlantic. But if we do go into a southeasterly, then it does hold those fronts much further away out toward the west of Ireland and keeps many of the British mountain regions under a dry pattern for many days ahead. Could be that there's less in the way of low cloud as well through next week, just as drier continental air gets into the mix. Again, some inversions could well be possible. It's a trend that looks pretty confident on many of the models. The exact wind direction as the week goes on uncertain, but it looks a pretty strong block of high pressure that's going to be in for that week, centred just to the east of Britain. So something of a southerly airflow type is the one that we're stuck with. No immediate signs of northerlies or easterlies in any of the forecasts just going forwards for the time being. So a lack of snow on the mountains is going to be the order of things heading into the second half of February. We may just drop those temperatures a touch with time, but nothing desperately cold on the immediate horizon. We'll update this video for you again on Friday. Thanks for watching today. Bye for now.